Imagine a queen surrounded by the wildest of rumors. Some whispered she died a virgin. Others swore she wasn't even a woman at all, but a man who had taken the place of Henry VIII's daughter. Scholars still argue to this day. Her illnesses, her body, her strange habits, all of it has fueled theories chilling enough to make your blood run cold. In 16th century England, words like these could cost you your life. Yet the myths were stronger than fear. Elizabeth I entered history as the Virgin Queen, a woman who never married, never bore an heir, and turned her solitude into a weapon more powerful than any army. But this legend is full of shadows. Why did she so fiercely avoid marriage when the Tudor dynasty desperately needed a direct heir? Why did some at court call her not just the Mother of England, but a false woman? And why, after her death, did whispers spread that her body was hidden from the people to conceal a shocking truth? We picture her in a stiff lace ruff, pale-faced, with an icy gaze. But behind that image lies an entire tragedy. Her childhood was a nightmare. Her mother executed by her father. Elizabeth herself declared illegitimate. She grew up in constant fear, surrounded by enemies, waking each morning with the thought, "How many days are left to me?" And that fear changed her. When her moment came, she refused to share power with any man. She chose lifelong solitude, turning her very body into a symbol. Virginity became her throne. But the price of that legend was staggering. So the question remains, was the Virgin Queen a victim of fate, a cunning strategist, or the greatest deception in royal history? Here is where the story truly begins. Elizabeth was born in September 1533, and from her very first day, her life was a scandal. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, was Henry VIII's second wife, the woman for whom he broke from Rome, declared himself head of a new church, and dragged England into conflict with half of Europe. Everyone expected a male heir. Instead, a girl was born. For Henry, it was disappointment. For Elizabeth, it was a lifelong sentence. Anne Boleyn's position as queen, her wit, her beauty, none of it saved her. When Elizabeth was only 2.5, Anne was executed in the Tower on charges of treason. Parliament declared Elizabeth illegitimate, stripping her of all status and rights to the throne. The little girl born outside the law grew up in an atmosphere of fear and humiliation. Her childhood was nothing like that of a princess. There was no luxury, no ballads sung in her honor. Instead, she was kept at the edge of court life, a living reminder of disgrace. Elizabeth learned young that in this family, mistakes were punished not with scolding, but with an axe. Her mother had been killed, her future erased. Even as a child, she understood the world ran on fear and force, and women were little more than pawns. But Elizabeth refused to be a pawn. She grew up remarkably intelligent and observant. While other children played, she studied for hours. Taught by some of the greatest humanists of Europe, she mastered Greek, Latin, French, Italian. She realized early that her mind was the only weapon no one could take from her. Every step of her life carried danger. When her half-brother, Edward VI, a Protestant, took the throne, Elizabeth had to hide her emotions and play the role of the agreeable sister. When he was succeeded by Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary, a fierce Catholic, Elizabeth once again stood in the line of suspicion. At any moment, she could be sent to the Tower, and she knew it. That constant danger shaped her character. She learned to smile when needed and to remain silent when silence meant survival. This was not the childhood of a princess. It was a school of survival. And that school forged the girl once dismissed as nothing into a woman who would hold England in her grasp for decades. In 16th century England, the name Tudor itself meant danger. Every branch of the dynasty, every illegitimate child, every ally or enemy was a potential claimant to the throne. And Elizabeth, daughter of Anne Boleyn, was an easy target. After Edward VI's death, the crown passed to her half-sister Mary Tudor. A devout Catholic, Mary saw Elizabeth not just as a younger sister, but as the living symbol of Protestant hopes. And those suspicions weren't unfounded. Every time a rebellion broke out, rumors tied Elizabeth's name to it. In 1554, Wyatt's rebellion erupted against Mary's marriage to Philip II of Spain. The conspirators wanted Elizabeth on the throne. Whether she was truly involved or not didn't matter. It was enough to have her arrested and sent to the Tower. Picture it, a 20-year-old woman who had lived her whole life in fear, suddenly locked in the same prison where her mother had awaited execution. Cold stone walls, damp corridors, guards with mocking stares. Everything reminded her how her story could end. It's said that as she passed through the Tower gates, she whispered, "Much innocent blood has been shed here. Perhaps mine will be next." For weeks, she was interrogated, her guilt hunted for. But Elizabeth endured. She knew how to stay silent, how to feign weakness, and how, at the right moment, to speak words that could save her life. She gave Mary no excuse to send her to the block. She was released, but under strict watch. Every letter she wrote was examined, every move she made carefully tracked. Elizabeth found herself once again in a cage where a single careless word could cost her head. Yet this ordeal only made her stronger. She learned the greatest lesson of all, how to wait. She didn't rush, didn't force her way forward. She endured, patiently biding her time until her enemies weakened on their own. She understood. The throne of England would come to her if only she survived long enough. And when Mary, childless to the end, died in 1558, this quiet, cautious young woman suddenly became the country's only hope. In November 1558, Elizabeth was crowned Queen of England. She was just 25 years old. Across a nation scarred by religious wars and drained by her sister's disastrous marriage, the people greeted their new ruler with relief and hope. When told of Mary's death, Elizabeth is said to have looked heavenward and whispered, "It is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in His eyes." Even then, she knew how to turn every word into a symbol. But with the crown came an unbearable burden. The kingdom was ruined, the treasury empty, enemies pressing on all sides. Catholic Spain and France saw the young Protestant queen as a fragile figure, someone who could be swept away at the right moment. Everyone expected her to choose the path of peace through marriage. Courtiers, foreign ambassadors, even her own subjects demanded she find a husband. A royal marriage could strengthen England with an alliance and secure an heir. But Elizabeth defied them all. She refused. And not just with a simple no. She declined in a way that kept every suitor uncertain. Philip II of Spain, French princes, Austrian archdukes, all waited. All sent letters and gifts, but none ever received a final answer. Elizabeth played a delicate game, promising to consider, smiling, sending tokens of favor, but never giving a decisive yes. Gradually, a new symbol was born for England. Instead of being the wife of some king, she declared, "I am married to England." Her virginity became a political instrument, a banner of purity, untouchability, and eternal devotion to her realm. She was hailed as the Virgin Queen. More than a charming nickname, it was a weapon of power. While other monarchs tied their fates to dynastic marriages, Elizabeth built her rule on her own body, turning the absence of a husband into the very symbol of independence. But with the crown came an unbearable burden. The rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered she despised men. Others claimed her body was simply incapable of bearing children. Still others went further, insisting she was no woman at all, but a man disguised as Henry VIII's daughter. These whispers never died, and the longer she refused marriage, the more gossip and intrigue grew around her court. At the heart of these rumors stood one man, Robert Dudley. He was her equal in age, the son of a disgraced duke, and they had known each other since youth. When Elizabeth ascended the throne, she appointed him Master of the Horse, a position modest in name, but one that allowed him constant presence at her side. Contemporaries noted she looked at him differently than at other men. His chambers at Whitehall were directly beneath hers, and people whispered there was a secret passage connecting them. They were seen together too often for it to be dismissed as simple friendship. But there was a complication. Robert was married. His wife, Amy Robsart, lived in seclusion and rarely appeared at court. Then, in 1560, she was found dead at the foot of a staircase in her home. The official verdict was accident, but everyone knew. Now, Robert was free. Rumors exploded. The nobility of England and foreign ambassadors alike were convinced the Queen would marry him. Instead, Elizabeth pulled away. Perhaps it was political pressure. A marriage to a mere nobleman would have weakened her authority. Or perhaps it was fear that people would accuse her of conspiracy and murder. That episode became a turning point. Elizabeth realized that any closeness to a man could destroy her rule. Yet she also knew she could not live without companionship altogether. Other favorites appeared in her life. Sir Walter Raleigh, young and charismatic, presenting her with exotic treasures from his voyages. The Earl of Essex, nearly 20 years her junior, whose arrogance provoked the council but captivated her court. With each of them, her name was linked. But officially, Elizabeth preserved her image of untouchability. Her virginity became a political myth, and it was that myth which allowed her to rule over men, over nations, over an entire continent. Still, the whispers continued. Perhaps she could not bear children at all. Perhaps her body hid a secret, guarded by her closest physicians. Each rumor gave rise to another theory, until eventually they coalesced into one of Europe's strangest legends. The longer her reign lasted, the more questions surrounded Elizabeth's body. Outwardly, she projected the image of a queen untouched by time: white powdered skin, heavy wigs, sumptuous gowns embroidered with gold that concealed every crease. But behind the mask lay a physical reality that her contemporaries tried to decode. It is known that Elizabeth suffered from serious ailments. In youth, she had survived smallpox, leaving scars she concealed with thick layers of white paint. In old age, her teeth blackened from her love of sweets, her voice grew hoarse, her gait unsteady. Yet the most unsettling mystery remained. She left no heir. Court physicians recorded strange irregularities in her health: recurring fevers, painful migraines, chronic fatigue. Modern scholars speculate about everything from cystic disease to endocrine disorders that might have hindered her sexual development. Such whispers found fertile ground. Already in the 16th century, insinuations circulated. Was Elizabeth even a woman? In Catholic lands, pamphlets and caricatures portrayed her with masculine features, hinting at some hidden natural anomaly. In dispatches from foreign envoys, cryptic lines appeared: "The Queen's body is not like that of other women." Later emerged the most exotic theory of all, the so-called Bisley theory. According to it, the real Princess Elizabeth died in childhood while hidden away in the village of Bisley during an epidemic. To conceal the tragedy from Henry VIII, she was secretly replaced by a boy of similar looks. This, said the legend, explained everything: her refusal to marry, her masculine features, her secrecy about her body.
There is no scientific proof for this, but the theory itself reveals how mysterious the Queen appeared even to her contemporaries. Elizabeth herself played upon that ambiguity. She deliberately emphasized her duality. In one famous speech, she declared, "I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king of England." Those words became her political sword. She could be the nation's mother, a ruthless warrior, or an icy judge. But the question remained unanswered. Was her virginity a true vow, or a carefully constructed legend? The rumors about Elizabeth's body, her strange solitude, her illnesses, only amplified her image as a queen outside of time. Yet it was from this perceived weakness that she forged her greatest weapon. Where other female monarchs were trapped by husbands or dynasties, Elizabeth built an entire ideology of virginity, turning it into the foundation of national myth. She refused to marry, but never abandoned the game of marriage. Every European court tried to claim her hand: Spain's Philip II, the Austrian Habsburgs, the French Duke of Anjou. These were not romances, but chess matches. She used her free hand as a political card, promising, hinting, delaying, while England gained breathing space or secured favorable terms. For the English nobility, too, her virginity became a safeguard. Had she married, her husband would have taken the throne and shifted the balance of power. By remaining the unmarried mother of her nation, she preserved equilibrium among rival factions. No one could claim that her crown belonged to another house. Most remarkable of all, Elizabeth managed to turn the absence of family into a sacred symbol. At her court, the image of the Virgin Queen became a kind of cult, the pure protectress of England, a second Virgin Mary. Painters depicted her in radiant white gowns. Poets called her Astrea, the goddess of justice. She became a living myth, not merely a monarch, but a sacred figure permitted to exist beyond ordinary human rules.
And when Catholic Europe mocked her as an old maid, she answered with the splendor of her court, the crushing of the Spanish Armada, and decades of stability. For the people of England, her virginity was not seen as weakness, but as the very guarantee of the nation's independence. "I am married to England," she declared, a phrase that entered history. But the cost of that myth was terrible. Behind the palace doors lived a woman consumed by intrigue, jealousy, and constant fear. She was allowed to be only a symbol. To be human was forbidden by fate itself.
And as old age drew near, the phantom grew sharper, a queen with no heir. Her marriage to England had secured strength in the present, but left the future of the dynasty in peril. With the passing years, Elizabeth's mystery only deepened. Her appearance became both a symbol and a mask. She was never seen without the thick white paint and heavy wigs that hid her aging face and thinning hair. Courtiers wrote that no one dared utter the word old age in her presence. She demanded that painters portray her forever youthful, bright-eyed, smooth-skinned, even when she was past 60. But behind this carefully crafted image was a woman whose body was betraying her. Elizabeth suffered from pain in her legs, had lost nearly all her teeth, and her skin broke out in sores from the toxic cosmetics she used, heavy with mercury.
Observers noted her restless nights and long retreats into solitude. The rumors that she was truly a man only multiplied. Once they had been mockery, now they became weapons. Her enemies spread tales of her unnatural body to undermine her power. And yet, despite it all, Elizabeth ruled with unshakable resolve. She outlived her great favorite, Robert Dudley, watched entire generations of courtiers and noble houses fade into history. She survived assassination plots, rebellions, and the violent deaths of monarchs across Europe, and still she held her throne. By the end of her life, England faced the greatest danger of all, the absence of an heir. The Tudor line had run dry. Everyone understood the virginity that had served her so well in youth now threatened the realm with a dynastic crisis. Who would inherit when the Virgin Queen was gone? Elizabeth stubbornly avoided the subject. It was as if acknowledging her own mortality would shatter the myths she had built. Only in her final years did she indirectly accept one possibility. James VI of Scotland, the son of her executed cousin, Mary Stuart. In the spring of 1603, her health collapsed. She refused to take to her bed, instead sitting upright on cushions in her chamber, her face gaunt and unmasked. Witnesses wrote that her silence and her stare were more terrifying than any words. She seemed already half in the world of shadows. At last she allowed herself to lie down, and soon after, the Virgin Queen was gone. She left behind a nation stronger than she had inherited. Under her, England became a naval power, crushed the Spanish Armada, laid the foundations of colonial expansion, and experienced a cultural flowering. It was her age that gave the world Shakespeare. But her private life remained unsolved. Was she truly a virgin, or did the whispers of her male nature carry some truth? Scholars still argue.
What is certain is that Elizabeth turned her personal mystery into the very core of her rule. Her virginity was not weakness, but weapon. She transformed the absence of a family into a bond with an entire country. And even her death without an heir only strengthened the myth. England would forever remember her as the woman who chose a crown over love and turned loneliness into legend. The image of the Virgin Queen survived the centuries. It was repeated by poets, painted by artists, studied by historians, yet even her contemporaries never truly knew the truth. And perhaps that was her greatest strength. She left behind not only an empire, but also an eternal mystery that still forces us to speak of her today. Elizabeth's story did not end with her death. On the contrary, it was after her reign that the real storm of speculation and myth began. In life, she had mastered the art of controlling her image. In death, that image took on a life of its own, almost legendary. The first and greatest myth, her bodily secret. In her own time, whispers spread that she did not possess a normal woman's nature. 17th-century pamphlets spoke of hidden signs of a man's body. By the 20th century, theories emerged that Elizabeth may have been intersex or even secretly replaced by a boy, a disguised princess son presented to the world to avoid a dynastic crisis. There is no proof of such claims, yet her unusual appearance and lifelong avoidance of marriage kept imaginations alive. The second myth, her mysterious lovers. Above all, it was Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, who spent nearly his entire life at her side. Their closeness inspired endless speculation. Some believed they were secretly a couple, others that it was merely a political game. In popular ballads, Elizabeth was accused of keeping a man at her throne. In diplomatic reports, she was even branded a wanton. But no facts were ever uncovered. At court, a code of silence prevailed, and no contemporary dared to reveal the truth. The third myth, the Ice Queen. Critics claimed her virginity was not a choice but a necessity. Some thought her barren, others believed her incapable of intimacy. Her rigid control over her image was explained as desperation. Any revelation would have shattered the myth upon which her throne rested. For this reason, Elizabeth forbade physicians from speaking about her health and ordered painters never to show her aging. And then there were the mystical legends. In some 17th century chronicles, it was written that Elizabeth's spirit appeared to Stuart kings, warning them of coming disaster. Among the people, she remained almost a saint, the queen who never betrayed England. Yet Catholic propaganda turned her into a monster, a witch upon the throne, who had abandoned womanhood for power.
Even today, historians argue, who was the Virgin Queen really? A woman who sacrificed her personal happiness for her country? A manipulator who turned her weakness into a weapon? Or simply a human being trapped in an image from which she could never escape? What remains undeniable is this: Elizabeth lived a life of power, intrigue, and triumph, and left no heir. Her virginity, whether literal or symbolic, became the foundation of a national myth. She transformed herself into an idea, one that time nor gossip could ever destroy. And that is why, 4 centuries later, we still debate her. The Virgin Queen endures as an unsolved riddle, perhaps the greatest mystery in the history of England.